Well, hey everybody, I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to As Above, So Below, a rune and tarot divination for Thursday, the 12th day. Are we the 12th day? Yes, of January 2023. Well, I don't write checks much anymore. Usually I do online banking and use a debit card and all of that, or a credit card, and so it's very rare for me to write a check. But one thing it's allowed me to do by not doing that is I don't have to screw up for the first couple of months and still write the year before. So, so advantage, I guess. I don't know. Well, I hope everybody's doing well. If you were here, if you watched Monday's video, you know that I said that it's possible that this week's readings are going to dovetail together, maybe. I know that they really aligned. We had, let's see, Manas and Fortuna Major for Monday's runes, for the reading itself, not for the esoteric influences, but for today's esoteric influences, Manas and Fortuna Major are the two runes I had drawn. And I do this at the beginning, well, prior to the beginning of each month. I'll do the whole month, and I put it all in a spreadsheet that then I can then grab everything, so I don't have to look stuff up, each time. I just get it all in a spreadsheet. It takes me a little while to do it, but I like doing it that way because everything is just right there. I can go and look at it, see where the moon is, where the sun is, where the planetary governors are for each day, and where what the strongest cosmic rays are. I put all of that in there, right? And so what the numerology is, and for the particular day, and I just happened to notice that this was that there's a connection here. So it's almost like it's like the whole reading for the whole week. Maybe we'll see what happens today. But last time we had the King of Wands. We had Manas, Fortuna Major for the runes, and then as the significators, then we had the King of Wands, the Hermit, and the Nine of Pentacles. So we'll see what we have today. With the esoteric forecast for today, though, which you can find on the blog over at Stepping Aside. The web address is imsteppingaside.com. So imsteppingaside.com. Not I am. I couldn't get that one. I didn't want that one anyway. I just wanted Stepping Aside, but they didn't have it. Somebody already had it or something. But anyway. So anyway, if you go over there, there's a weekly post that goes out late Sunday or early Sunday morning, midnight, whatever, or sometimes I do it Saturday night, that shows the forecast for the whole week. So you can look at that. You can also get it in the newsletter I do. That's free. You can just sign up for it there on the blog. On the left side panel there, you just kind of scroll down, you'll see sign up for newsletter. You just put your email address in there, and there it goes. And so you'll get this in your inbox on Saturdays. And so, plus a few other things. There's a tarot card of the week. There's an herb of the week. Sometimes I have stuff in there. I'm an affiliate for the Herbal Academy. It's one of the places that I've had herbal training. Most herbalists, though, you get this on your own. You by learning from what other herbalists are saying about this herb or that herb. But I also wanted to have some formal training. So I've had some form. I completed the course at Sage Mountain, and then I also have done some coursework here with the Herbal Academy. I really like them. So sometimes you'll see stuff like that if they've got a sale on courses or something, or a new course comes out, and then I'll put it in there. But other than that, there's affiliate links to some stuff in there, but it doesn't matter if you don't want to click on them. You don't have to. But it usually takes you to buy herbs or something. It is what that is. But anyway, lots of different things in the newsletter. So for today, the 12th of January, I'm looking just at the day itself when I do these daily forecasts. And so if you go to the blog, you'll see something about Jupiter. which is always why it's nice to read the post at the beginning of the week, because those go through the whole week. So it's what's Jupiter doing all week long. How is Jupiter influencing? But Jupiter is the planetary governor of Thursday. So 12 reduces to 3. So the influences that I looked at, besides the human design chart for today, and I take what the Jupiter information is for that. I have 3. I have Manas, Fortuna Major, and the 3rd and 7th rays, cosmic rays, are the strongest. Also, one other thing, Mars has been in retrograde. It goes direct today. There'll be some shadow period afterwards. But mostly, hopefully you were reflecting on how you assert yourself. That might be one way to look at it. When it's in its direct movement, that's external. I see that as external. Retrograde means you look at things internally. So anyhow, so today's esoteric influences then would be a complex rune. Manas represents the individual within the family or society, and its presence today invokes integration with others, especially if some level of healing has taken place. Perhaps there's been some conflict resulting from irrationality or interference, and irrespective of who's at fault, eventually you have to come back together to reset the table, so to speak. And at that point, you can find creative solutions that were once perceived as impossible. Mondays, I'll just remind you, after some careful analysis, you realize you've gone as far as you can go on your own, and you were inviting others into the mix. So that's how we started out on Monday. And now, we're talking again about integration. So it's like integration all week long, and how you handle that. Let me just take a little drink here of my tea. I make my own herbal teas, and I my favorite one is the yard tea, where I just, go around. Well, I don't want to do this yet. Where I just go around the yard and the property area and collect things I want in my tea. But that's not what I'm doing with this one. This one's just an everyday tonic tea, and then I put a little bit of digestive tea in with it. I mix the two together, and it's just herbs I grow, So, well, I had to buy the Tulsi, because the Tulsi I wasn't able to grow Tulsi this last year. I don't know why, it just wouldn't grow. And so I went ahead and I bought some, and used it in this particular tea blend. But normally I grow that stuff myself. Anyway, this is Perthro. This is today's rune that we're going to start out with, one of the significators. Perthro is it's a directional rune. Here it's open to birth. Here it's open to death. Here it's a cauldron, and here it's the womb. But the point is that what Perthro is really about is fate, and how we determine who decides that. Are we going to decide to control our own fate, or are we going to give that away to somebody else? Sometimes we have to. You work for somebody, and in a sense, you're giving away part of your fate anyway within that job you have to the employer, and because they're the ones that are going to decide whether or not you stay employed with them or not. And so we always have to contend with some of that. But wherever you can make that choice yourself, then I think that you have to do that. And if we're talking about irrationality today, or interference, or trying to take responsibility for your own behavior, or whatever, and when you're trying to integrate with others, sometimes that's going to involve healing, like I talked about here in the esoteric influences. And so, but once you get rid of the drama, then you're able to move on, right? And so at that point, Perthro, I suppose, can come in and have an impact in terms of how are you going to do that? Are you going to be led by the other people in your family, or whatever this is, this group of people you're involved with that you're going to integrate with, whatever that is for you today? Are you going to do that in a way where you're going to maintain some self-control in it? because ultimately, sometimes we give ourselves away to others, and then that creates a lot of anger. You can create a lot of depression in people, and because you're not in control of who you are in that exchange. And so this may be giving a little bit of insight. Let's see what the geomancy rune is, though. Let me put these in order. Okay, something's coming to an end. So maybe allowing other people to control your fate is coming to an end. That would be Kata Draconis. Let me get that. And no, we did not have that last time. We had it last week. This is Kata. Kata, this would be Caput. This is Kata. Two sides of the same coin again. Kata Draconis represents the south node of the moon, or the past, or past life, or karma, or past experience. I don't look at karma as a negative thing. I just look at it as stuff you've not gotten right, and you're still dealing with it. It's still going to come up for you, which is good, because you want to be able to look at a situation or a struggle or a challenge or what have you that you have, or a wounding or something, and how is it impacting your life again. And in that regard, if you look in terms of Perthro, are you going to let the past or past karma or what have you control your fate? Are you somebody who says, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I'm going to raise my kids the way I was raised because that's how I was raised. I'm not going to change up on anything. I'm not going to rethink something. It's that kind of thing. It's the way I've always done it. It was what was done to me, and so I'm going to carry that forward instead of maybe, thinking, really critically and analyzing, well, does this even work? If it's not working for me, it's not working for the bigger situation, then obviously you can't carry forward your past experience into your present moment, other than to inform you that, hey, that's not going to be workable, right? In other words, putting it into perspective, using the energy of Perthro to birth something new, in other words. And in this case, I think it's really about, what are you allowing to control you? And again, sometimes, like in a job situation, you don't have all that much control over that. You have the expectations of the boss that you either fulfill or you don't, right? And if you don't, then you're out of there, right? Typically. But let's just see what the cards have to say. I love it when I get Perthro, because you're really talking about, are you taking responsibility for your own future, for your present and your future? Or are you just simply allowing, or you're going along with the flow? And I don't think it makes any sense to necessarily do that all the time. Although people find themselves in that position, where, and maybe they don't even realize it's happening until they kind of step outside of it, or something happens that kind of wakes them up a little bit, and suddenly they see a pattern. It's like, ooh, I don't like that pattern, So, but let's see what the cards have to say. Well, we got all majors today, so clearly major arcana cards are soul archetype cards. And so it's really the soul saying, look, I'm really in charge here, even though I know the ego doesn't want me to be, but I'm really the one in charge here. So in other words, who's going to control your fate? Well, your soul can and should, right? If you see things from a soul perspective versus an ego perspective, then you're less reactionary. So your reactions are no longer controlling what happens. You're thinking with a higher vision is what happens when you're controlling your own fate. And putting an end to the past with Kata Draconis here, putting an end to the past or the ego or what have you, steering you in a direction that's probably not the best direction for you. So what we have today, 3 different ideas. We have strength, we have the emperor, and we have the chariot. Let's see, 8 and 4 is 12. That's 3 and 7 is 10. So 1, so new beginnings. So this is obviously a new beginnings numerologically. And again, Perthro would align with that as well. again, where you're trying to decide who controls my destiny, who controls my outcome. Do I do that, or are circumstances or other people or what have you, or past life experience or past experience. A lot of the times we're driven by how many emotional wounds we have and what they are. And that seems to govern how we see the world, how we see our experiences. But it doesn't have to. Again, so Perthrow, in a sense, is suggesting that you have a choice today that you can make to either to take a little more control over your life, or to let it go on as it is. But here we have strength. We see a woman. She has flowers in her hair. Well, it's kind of not really flowers. Well, I guess it kind of is. It's both flowers and it's leaves. As sort of like a garland crown in her hair. She also has the same that seems to be wrapped around her in front like a little apron, like a flowered apron. She's holding the head of a lion who's just absolutely thrilled to be with her. But this is really about taming the wild within. It's a continuous process, as you see with the figure 8 or lemniscate up at the top there above her head. But basically, this is taming the wild within. It's the inner strength to control the ego and to control reaction versus, just allowing it to all run amok. We see so much of that as an example in our lives these days. Maybe not in our own personal lives, but you see it out in the world where everything is this performance nonsense. So everybody gets everybody all stirred up, all upset. Everybody's yelling and screaming. Everybody's, acting out and all of it. And all of it's a lie. It's like they want to stand back and see what effect they have and how many people they can control. And so we have a lot of that going on. And it's bound to trickle down into our personal lives. We see that in government right now, and it's the next couple of years are going to be very interesting, because it's like, oh, we did this. It's like, well, no, you actually didn't. Well, we voted for it. Well, but it didn't go through because you have another house to go through. You have the Senate to go through. You have the president. No, it didn't. You didn't do anything. You just think you did. And you can't do what you did to begin with. It's one of those things, but people are going to get upset, and they're going to believe these people because they think they're telling the truth when they're not. And so you have all this drama that can result. And the idea behind the strength card is to have that inner strength. And where does that come from? That comes from the soul, and from spirit, basically, guiding your vision, guiding your perceptions, so that you have the strength to control that ego within. We can call this taming the wild within, but really we're talking about ego. And right now we're living in a time where ego is on display everywhere. And it's very odd to watch it, especially if you're somebody that recognizes what's going on. It's like, well, all right, that's interesting, but it's not going to get us anywhere, and it's going to be harmful. So, and everybody's celebrating all of that. It's like, really, the very people that will be harmed are celebrating all of this. So you see where right now, one of the issues I think that we're dealing with collectively, whether it's individual or not, but collectively we're dealing with that whole need to tame the wild within and use that inner strength from higher awareness to understand the bigger picture of what's really happening, and to put your support and your trust and your faith, and maybe some elements of Perthrow, can you do that now and trust it? You can't, at least in my opinion, you can't. How we deal with authority is next with the emperor. How we see it, how we manage it, and how we express it. The emperor sits on his throne. You see the ram's heads on all four corners. This is the fourth card of the major arcana. So you're talking about and back here you see what looks like mountains behind him, but they're different colors, aren't they? You've got one that's darker and one that's lighter, and the one that's darker is on the left side, so that would be the feminine or receptive side of self, and the other side would be the masculine or projective side of self. Now it's interesting that the feminine side is a little taller than the masculine side. And this is basically looking at it from his perspective, not from the reader's perspective. I do that. I don't look at these from the reader's perspective. I look at it from how is it drawn, so in other words, what is his left side showing us? What is his right side showing us? And in this regard, it suggests to me that some of the greater strength that the emperor can manifest has to do with knowing when to take the reins and when to assert himself and when not to, when to show compassion, when to show a level of selflessness that considers all possibilities, basically, and then it takes us into the same thing here with the chariot. But in this case, it's how we manifest authority in our lives, what kind of structure do we require, and in terms of Perthrow, how that would align with that is: are we going to live in the present moment? Are we going to stay stuck, or are we going to stay stuck to the past? Because all there really is the present. We have a memory of the past, but the past is no longer happening. And we fool ourselves because, in a sense, I put this card down in the past, these cards down in the past, but they're still here. So they're still happening. So it's very easy for the lines between past, present, and future to get blurred because we see the relationship between them, right? But if we're constantly living in the past, then we can't do justice to the future with whatever we're doing in the present. So we can't do justice to the present either. Right? And so again, Perthrow comes in. Who controls all of that? Well, you do. And hopefully it's your higher awareness that's doing the controlling so that the ego doesn't take control and have you reacting all over the place, which is generally based on the past, right? So in a sense, the emperor is the anchor for the reading to anchor us into the present moment. And to use our authority in a way, our inner authority in a way that actually can do something positive for us, instead of always feeling like we're trying to play catch up, and trying to stay in line with somebody else's expectations. And although, you're going to have to do that periodically in your life, when you get down to your personal life, although there has to be, if you're in a family or what have you, there's going to be some collaborative effort there. At some point, though, you have to assert your own authority, your own inner authority. So if your spouse wants to do something and you just traditionally go along with your spouse, maybe if it's really something you don't want to do, you have to stand up and say, I really don't want to do this. And maybe the spouse isn't going to like it, but, maybe they'll get mad. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll be like, really? And because we all get accustomed to this flow of energy between one another, right? And maybe you don't say anything about stuff for a long time. And all of a sudden you do. And you realize, well, maybe the spouse wasn't trying to control anything at all. It was just, that's just what happened, right? You just went along with something and so it happened. And he just thought you were on board, truly on board, or she thought you were truly on board. So again, asserting your inner authority, I think, aligns very well with strength, as long as it's from a higher awareness standpoint. Then we come to the chariot. Now, given that it's the seventh card of the major arcana, you're looking at a certain level of balance. You see that with the sphinxes, his little lions down here. One's black, one's white. So this one's going to represent the receptive side of self. This would represent the projective side of self. Here in the center, you have a shield with a dreidel that's fully upright. Again, balanced. And you see the two wheels on either side. You see the towers on either side. The whole card talks about balance, just having those kinds of things within the cards. You have the winged sun above, the dreidel on the shield. You also have this is an interesting thing. Here you have the cube, which is the glyph for earth. So you could bring grounding into this. But here you also have maiden, mother, and crone. I know this one's kind of implied because that's actually part of his his armor, really. It's kind of like a breastplate, but then you also see it in the collar of the clothing he has on. So that's kind of implied. And then you see a bunch of Merkabahs, which represent stars above him, which denotes being a king. Also, the star on his kind of a crown there that he's wearing also indicates the same thing. But the idea that behind the chariot is when to take charge and when to assert yourself and when to drop resistance. Here, everyone is at rest, and so he's dropped resistance, but he's staying in balance while he does that. It's no different than, and I've used this analogy before with the seven, excuse me, the idea of the scales and letting the two pans come to rest before you can really see what you have. When you're trying to weigh something out, you're making a decision. You have to you have to know what the facts are. You have to let it all kind of settle so you can see what it is without the emotion coming in to drive a reaction, basically. And so there has to be kind of a balance between head and heart in a sense. And that's the situation with the seven. I think that. So what are we looking at when we want to determine our own fate, or we're deciding who does that? Then we're going to be thinking about, what kind of inner strength do I have? Am I able to control my ego? Am I able to control the egoic reactions that happen? With the emperor, how grounded am I? And how do I assert authority? Do I try to control the situation for other people, or am I respectful of what other people have to offer, and to have that semblance of balance there, balanced energy exchange, balanced interaction. And do I know with the chariot when to drop resistance and when to take the reins? The chariot is about momentum. But again, sometimes the best momentum is just sitting back and watching and to see what's happening and to get a clear idea of what's really going on. How can you move forward without that? And yet we do it all the time, don't we? So I think that especially if you're talking about, and we have been, integration with other people and how successful that's going to be, we have to learn how to maximize our own inner strength, how to tame the ego within, how to allow for the views of other people, in other words, instead of deciding, oh no, only what I have to say matters. Again, Perthro, controlling your own fate doesn't mean that you control the fate of other people, right? It's just controlling your own. What goes into that? If you're having a struggle with it, looking toward the past to see, okay, what about my past is trying to rear its ugly head and control my reactions now? Is it something I can put to rest? Is it something I can let go of? Or do I need to continue to use that to sort of protect what I'm doing and how I'm interacting with others? Because that's usually what you're doing. There's some kind of protection going on. And you got to ask yourself, do I still need to do that? Is that really just because, my father was overbearing and all of that? Do I need to act that way to people now? Is that what I learned? Or do I shrink at the idea of anybody being overbearing and I just give myself away to other people? In other words, how am I exercising that inner strength from a higher level of awareness, or am I letting my ego and the fear that's usually caught up in the ego control everything I'm doing? So that would be the expression of Perthro with the strength card. But then with the emperor now, you're going to be determining, well, how do I assert myself? How do I assert myself in situations? Do I assert myself in a way that's pragmatic? Do I assert myself in a way that's with discipline? Do I do it in a way that's structured? Do I do it in a way that's grounded? Or am I just out there for my own ego's sake and trying to control everything? Those are the kinds of, and again, that's also involved in Perthro. With Cauda Draconis, we're trying to find what are we putting, what is actually, what are we bringing into the future, well, to the present moment and into the future, from the past, and are we ready to let go of that, so these are the two dynamics that are involved here. And with the chariot, it's very simple. When do I take the reins, and when do I just have to step back. The point is that there's going to be times when your leadership is going to be called for, and you may be controlling the project or setting the goals or what have you, or determining these are the milestones that we need to make, and this is what we need to do, this is the structure of it all, and there's nothing wrong with that. But as a leader, are you going to be the benevolent leader that allows for the necessary input of other people, or are you just going to simply control the whole thing? Sometimes the situation may define itself that way, where one person has to be in control and everybody just needs to do what they're told to do to make this work. That's a different kind of situation, though. This is really, I think what it's really talking about, given that we have 3 major arcana cards, is these are ongoing issues that people are dealing with. And that maybe your soul, when it decided to come into form, these are the kinds of things I want to experience. These are the kinds of lessons I want to learn. Well, when you see all 3 or a run on, or at least 2 major arcana cards, it's like soul is saying, well, can we get on with it? Can we get on with that learning process? Or are we going to stay in the morass of the ego, and just sort of live there? And the strength card would be suggesting no. And in terms of who controls your fate, well, at that point, higher awareness is controlling it, isn't it? Instead of staying in the ego's whole reactionary deal that seems to drive so much of what we're seeing right now. It may seem fun, but in the end, it really doesn't get anybody anywhere, except places that aren't good for anyone. So I don't know. I think maybe these are the kinds of things ultimately that we need to think about in terms of our interactions with others this week. And how do we come together with others in a way that elevates all, instead of just some individual's ego. And I think the Perthro is suggesting that we control more of that than we even realize we can. Having that inner strength to speak up when maybe you're not comfortable doing so. And say, this doesn't feel right to me. This doesn't feel good to me. I don't think I want to do this. I don't think I want to be involved in this. And trying to find some way to resolve that and feel comfortable with whatever's going on. And you may discover that you just can't. You have to step out and say, I don't want to be involved in this at all, and so again, and that takes a level of inner strength that's born, I think, of higher awareness instead of ego, to stand up for what you need, to stand up for what you believe, and not give that away to somebody else that isn't going to take care of that for you, really isn't going to have your best interests at heart. They may have their own, but they're not going to have yours. So not the final analysis. And I think that no matter how noble somebody may think they are, I don't know. I think the ego takes over and tells you what it wants you to hear. And I think the cards today are suggesting, you don't want to do that. And I think Perthro is suggesting you don't want to do that. So anyway, interesting. It's interesting when you have a whole week's stuff sort of, the Hermit from on Monday, you're talking, and the King of Wands, again, the same sort of thing. How do you assert authority, and are you going to do that from a higher perspective? And when you do, then you get the Nine of Pentacles is suggesting that you're going to have a lot more satisfaction in your life if you come from that standpoint than if you let ego drive everything. So it's kind of interesting that it ultimately did dovetail together. So that's cool. I think that's what I'm going to do each time. I'm just going to, well, I mean, I've been trying to do that, but sometimes it doesn't really dovetail together like that, you know. It's just kind of interesting when it does. I think I suspect that for this year, this may be when I've done the runes for the year and the tarot cards for the year. It just seems to be that these are the kinds of, you know, last year was about discovery, really. And this year is, well, what are we going to do with what we discovered? And how are we going to see it? How are we going to react to it? How are we going to manage it? How do we make things better? And so it almost seems like this is kind of part and parcel with what we have to look forward to this year in 2023. You have, I mean, ultimately it's a 7 numerology for the year. So again, you know, you have to let things settle out. You have to see what's really going on. You have to stay observant, and you have to do it in a way that's dispassionate. Another aspect of the 7 is justice, weighing things out in a just fashion, seeing what the real truth is and not succumbing to the illusion of performance, of ego performance, if you will. And we've had so much of that over the last few years that it clouds perception, it clouds what's really true. And it leaves everybody wondering, well, who do I believe? Well, unfortunately, you really have to do your own due diligence, and in likelihood, we always had to, but we all got comfortable, and truth was a little more easily understood. But then at some point, it stopped being so, and now it just sort of leaves everybody in this weird position, because it isn't just something that's happening over there or in another state or what have you. It's happening in our daily lives, and people wanting to see things in a way that are self-focused and really don't serve the rest of the group, whether it's a business or whether it's a community, a neighborhood, a group of friends, a family, whatever. You see this dynamic playing out, and if we don't get a handle on it, I don't know. It's, you know, it's disturbing to me, and so I think that this is the year where we really start to understand, to look back on the year before of what we've learned, and come to some understanding of, you know, how much, you know, how were we conned, how were we duped, you know, what were all the lies, and when people want to focus on those and offer those as solutions, then, you know, they control everyone's fate in a way that is never going to get us where we want to be. So you can't build things on lies, and that seems to be what has become the norm now. Just lie about it, you know, and no one's going to know. How are you going to really know? Well, I think there's ways to know, and so, you know, and higher awareness is one of them. And I mean, you know, when something doesn't seem right, maybe you got to go with that more. I don't know. So anyhow, that's all for today. And went a little long, I apologize. And but, you know, think about it. Think about letting things settle out, before you start reacting to things. Be sure you understand the truth so that you're not strung along by somebody that's just trying to control you. You need to be the one to control you, and instead. So anyhow, thanks for watching, and come back again on Monday for another edition of As Above, So Below. Again, if you forget the web address, just click on Show More under the video. It'll open up a little thing and you're going to have to scroll down a little bit, because I talk about first what I'm doing here, you know, and then after that are some links, and there's a link to to my website, Stepping Aside, my blog. And so I'd love you to go check that out if you like, and see what you think. I'm pretty proud of it, and I've been doing it now for, I guess it's over 10 years now. So So I'm pretty happy with it, but it's undergone some changes over time. But now it's pretty stable as to what I do there, and then I'll throw in some other things now and then. But what you see is what you get over there anyway. Again, thanks so much for coming by. Click subscribe if you haven't. I'd love you to do that. And we'll talk again on Monday. Be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.